Today we're talking about somewhat of an oldie, not too old. That movie is.
In life, they're at odds.
She's beautiful, but she's a pill.
Online, they're in love.
Do you think we should meet?
Meet?
I would love, I don't know how we can set this up because we don't talk to a lot of, teenagers, mid-20s, whatever. I would love somebody born after the year 2000 to watch this movie and see what resonates at all. I can kind of get past how dated the concept of the movie is because I remember a time before email, and I especially remember a time with dial-up internet and with email being new and with it being fancy and even like instant messenger, AIM. You would sometimes talk to, like the idea of talking to a stranger on AIM wasn't that weird.
No,
like
not at all.
people did it when it first came out. It was like you somehow just discover people in other parts of the country or the world and you talk to them. So I can kind of resonate with this movie, like kind of connect with it, but it is a bananas plot line to anyone. I'd say born after the year 2000 and younger, to try to watch this and think like, why the fuck are these two strangers emailing each other? Now, email is a thing used for work, used for offices. It's not even used for fun. Like even that idea is
there's two
silly.
different elements to this movie, right? So like, number one is the technology aspect of it, and then number two is the storyline aspect of it. So the technology aspect of it, I'm from the generation that grew up without computers, and then computers were introduced. And so I remember like AOL and AOL chat rooms and that whole thing. So it's not odd to me, right? Like, and it would be very odd to them to think about that and to say like, there was a thing called AOL, and they go, oh, I know AOL.
Call now for America Online, a new way to use your computer to communicate, have fun, and get instant news and information.
And then they would say, well, but it was other things. It wasn't just email. It wasn't just an email client.
Listen, I can't go to the game today.
What?
My kid's got to go to the library to look up dinosaurs.
Hey, we can take care of all that before we go.
Yeah, right.
Oh, with America Online.
It was all these other elements to it, right? Including AIM, which broke off into its own thing, but it used to be part of AOL and the whole AOL interface. So I don't think that the technology aspect of it would at all resonate with them. At all. The storyline, I think, does. And there's for a couple of reasons.
Which part of it?
Well, kind of the whole thing of it, right? So, first off, this is based on, or based off of a play called She Loves Me, which I will add. As I was telling Ann last night, I was like, oh, we're going to do You Got Mail. And she was like, oh, are you going to talk about She Loves Me? And I was like, And she's like, you should talk about She Loves Me. The reason why is because in high school, I was in that show.
Oh, no shit.
Of She Loves Me. Ann was in it too.
Were you me? And was Ann she?
I don't know. Well, no. We were not she and me. We were other characters. I was poorly cast, I should say, not typecast. I was very poorly cast. So this is 18-year-old Chris, who, I have a full beard now, right? Like, my high school would not allow facial hair. So you weren't allowed, you had to shave. So like.
Did you go to high school at the Yankees?
Yes, I did go to high school with the Yankees. Catholic Jesuit high school, like, whatever. So no facial hair. So you used to have to like shave, right? But me being me, like I used to have to shave all the time because I would have a 5 o'clock shadow at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so I got cast as this like young kid in the show. And so like I had to shave before the show so that this way I did not have a 5 o'clock shadow pretending to be this kid, this like paper boy in this show. I was so poorly cast, like it was so poorly cast, and wanted to make sure that I said that and told that story about how poorly cast I was in this show. But the storyline is from that show, so it's like the same type of thing, right? So you have the element of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, who Meg Ryan has the independent bookstore and Tom Hanks is trying to buy it and shut it down.
We have to shut it down.
Oh my God.
And they don't know each other's story as they're talking to each other over the internet. You know, like Tom Hanks doesn't know that she's the one he's trying to put out of business.
Right.
You know, so like, I get that. Like, and I think today, like, kids would still get that too, where they would be like, oh, somebody doesn't know because they're talking to somebody over the internet who they have no idea who they are, and they're actually trying to ruin their business.
Well, so there are a couple of things. And the reason I asked you to specify on the plot line is the bookstore part of it might even be lost, because I remember this sort of being a thing. Like, there are still people that hate Walmart, for example. Remember this, and now Amazon's the big devil of, like, there's always this big thing coming to put other mom and pops out of business. I kind of remember it being a thing with, like, Borders, Barnes and Noble, and people, like, hating these, like, mega Walden book, like, hating these mega bookstores that are going to put mom and pop shops out. But, like, bookstores are barely even a thing right now.
I mean,
I
they
think you
still,
only have mom and pop shops.
they still kind of are.
The mom and pop shops actually won.
That's true, they did.
I
I mean, well, Barnes and Noble is still kind of a thing, so like they haven't like fully won, but like the idea. 1 second.
Mom and Pop send their regards.
The mom and pops almost kind of won in a way, because now it's like bookstores. You want to go to a bookstore, it's like cute, it smells musty, there's a cat on the floor, and it's like an old.
But it's less about the books that you're. It's not like you're necessarily like going to buy like the new books, right? Like so, I'm thinking about, because I think the bookstore in this is Shakespeare and Company, right? Which is in New York, which is based off of the Shakespeare and Company, which is in Paris, which is like really cool to go to. And it's like the reason you would go to a bookstore like that, or like a mom and pop bookstore or a small bookstore, is because you're looking for like rare books.
Yeah, that's what I was just
right.
Saying.
Like
it's like you don't. The only reason these bookstores exist now is for stuff like that. Like you're looking for a specific old item that you're not going to get. Maybe you're not going to get on Amazon or something, and you go kind of for the experience. I know people that love going to bookstores because they're surrounded by all these old. Even if they're not buying something, they browse around these old books. Sometimes they're coffee shops inside. They're always kind of like hipsterish, and they feel like something from the past.
Well, I mean, to that hipster element, I think that kids nowadays would resonate with that, because they like the idea of.
That's true.
That older, like, so it's kind of come full circle,
and you can just
right?
make the mega bookstore Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
I talk about.
So I mean, I think that the storyline still fits and still works. It's just the technology aspect of it, and it's because it's the birth of the internet versus where we are now on the internet, which is like the internet taking everything over, right? Like everything in life is the internet. We're on the internet. Like I'm on the internet right now, as opposed to then, right? And like you said that you had some experience with like the dial-up thing. Like I remember the dial-up thing, and like you had to make sure that nobody was on the phone, and like if somebody was on the phone line, like you had to tell them to get off so that you could get on the internet, and then you had to make sure that like nobody would call, because then that would kick you off of the internet, because if somebody called, so like that was a whole like thing. As of now, it's like the internet is just readily available.
It's on your freaking. You have the internet in your pocket. Like, yeah, it's completely different. So that's the technology is the hang up. I don't know if any kids are really, besides like on Tinder or something, which you can see pictures and where the person is and what their job is and details. I don't know if they're really talking to complete strangers.
No, I think in fact it's gone the other way. It's like stranger danger. Like if somebody is approaching you on the internet, like you're assuming that it's this. They're saying that they're the deposed king of Nigeria, and they want to give you like $200 million or whatever if you can help them.
You can usually spot it too. It's either a spam email or you get a message on LinkedIn being like, "You could be great for our multi-level marketing company selling steak knives," or something like
that. Or you go even the other direction too, where you're talking about like it's Chris Hansen. It's like
why don't you
have a seat over here, because I'm a pedophile trying to like.
I'm a pedophile.
Those are the options. Like that's it. That's it.
I think that is going to be completely lost, because the idea of, again, email is used mostly in a business sense now. Kids aren't emailing for fun.
Yeah.
Because we have texting. I think that is completely lost because the idea of emailing, like being pen pals with a stranger, is so weird. So you almost have to have somebody of a certain age explain it to them. Because I got the context, but I was like, this is weird. Why like they're emailing with each other? It's weird. And she has a boyfriend, and the whole thing was very strange.
Yeah,
I think it'd be lost on a lot of people.
Yeah, like, and that's like the other thing too, which that I mean, I think that element does resonate. The whole thing that she's got a boyfriend, and she's messaging with this dude, like, that's a whole thing. Like, Snapchat,
Yeah.
you know, or sliding into somebody's DMs right now. Like, that's still something that, as long as somebody like points out, like, yeah, that whole element, it's still out there.
Well, why weren't we told about this?
Settle down, son.
No, I have no intention of settling down. This man killed my uncle, and he's
Still out there.
I think you could probably redo this movie in a way. You'd have to change it a little bit because it's hard to be completely anonymous because of photos, like
Yeah.
on Snapchat or like a dating app or something. Like they're going to be photos.
Well, but you got to worry about catfishing.
Yeah. I mean, the Manti Te'o story.
Yeah.
There's the whole dynamic that existed in this movie is completely different for now. So if you can translate it to a current form of technology, maybe you can kind of get there. But if you can't, I think this movie is not watchable if you're under 23. I don't know.
Unless they're watching it like with not nostalgia, but like to make fun of what life used
Yeah.
to be like before you had the internet readily available.
Or with their parents being like, this is what email used to be. This is dial-up internet.
Yeah.
These are bookstores.
Did you know that, you know, we have the casting of young Dave Chappelle
Yes.
in this movie? Did you know that Dave Chappelle was actually offered the role of Bubba in Forrest Gump?
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah, and he turned it down because he thought the movie was going to flop. And then, like, it ended up not flopping and being, you know, an all-time classic movie.
Right.
And so he's friends with Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks was like, I'll get you another role. Like, I'm going to hook you up.
That sucks. We'll get to this another time. Forrest Gump, warm take from me, overrated.
Huh. Okay.
We'll do that in another episode.
I
But
think we
just wanna
should
throw
yeah.
that nugget out there.
I think we
real quick.
should definitely explore it. So talking about computers, you know, in this movie we talk about like what's available on computers, and I think back to the types of things that were available on my Windows 95 or Windows 3.1, you know, computer. This is now after having a DOS computer, a DOS-based computer. But like into Windows, and it had like all the games available, right? Like Solitaire and Minesweeper and Hearts
I
and
remember
things like
those.
that, right?
I love Solitaire.
In this movie, they talk about having to remove Solitaire because it's, you know, productivity. Well, that's actually based on. Well, that's actually based on real life. The governor of Virginia at the time actually took Solitaire, Minesweeper, and Hearts off of the computer because of productivity issues. So he didn't want taxpayers to have to pay for government workers.
Kind of like that.
This is Governor George Allen having done that at the exact same time. So it like happened in real life.
Never heard of him. Should have been president. Do you remember a couple years ago in Illinois there was a state rep playing Candy Crush?
Oh yeah.
On the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you can just do that anywhere. You can do it on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to have a computer or dial-up or anything like that. The one thing that I like about this is that this relationship between, like, when you think of the 90s, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan are like synonymous, right? Like in terms of whether you're talking about rom-com or anything else, they're synonymous with movies from the 90s. But it actually goes back even further to the very late 80s. I think it's technically a 1990 movie, but it could be 89. Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks were in
Joe versus the volcano.
Joe versus the Volcano together.
Yeah, never seen it. I'm
That's
familiar
another
with it.
movie I think we should definitely dive into because I remember that from my childhood, and not a good movie.
Doesn't sound like it.
But it's Tom Hanks, like it's the intersection of where Tom Hanks was doing like comedy, and he was doing a lot of comedy, in particular in like the 70s and 80s. Money Pit is another movie that he was in that was like, it's a comedy movie, to where he's like starting to move away from the comedy element and like straight acting. And that's where you see like Forrest Gump and all of these other movies where
Saving
like
Private Ryan.
Castaway,
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan, where he's playing like a straight character, and he's become that straight character. Not to say he hasn't done comedy things.
No, but mostly
but
the last 20, 50, 25 years, Captain Phillips, like Sully, like they've
Yeah.
all been really heavy
Yeah.
serious roles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's really all I have about this movie is what it comes down to, whether it will hold up, like whether people will actually be like,
Yeah.
I can watch this movie and be like, yeah, this holds up. And it's not because it holds up because of the content of it necessarily, like the storyline, because I think the storyline holds up. It's everything else, right? Like the tertiary elements of this movie is what spoils it.
I agree, and I think the reason I think it doesn't is I won't say I struggled with it, but I was kind of like, this is so dated throughout.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody 10 years younger, which is terrifying, and be like, how would they, if you grew up after the advent of email, like after AIM even, because I think me having instant messenger and like seeing instant messenger blow up kind of helped with this, because it's kind of the same concept. But I just don't know how you can connect with it. It's one of the more dated, like, I'm trying to think of movies that use technology from a different era. Like if you go really far back to like the 40s or something, you could just like suspend disbelief. You're like, oh,
Real Genius. What about, we could do? We should do Real Genius.
Yeah. But if you watch like a movie from the 40s or 50s or 30s, whatever, and they're like, oh, they have radios and not TVs. Oh, they have to, hold the phone like this and whatever. Like you suspend disbelief. You're like, that's the olden times. But this isn't the olden times.
No.
This is the 90s. So it's like not old enough where you're like, oh, this is just dated. You're like, ugh, like what the hell is this? People didn't always have email?
It's that like middle ground, right? Because you always have there's like a bell curve of what happens with technology or with some new device or something, right? Where it's like the early adoption and you go, okay, well that's the olden times, right? And then you have the current times on the other side, right? But it's that middle part you're like, you actually had to like live like that?
Yeah.
Like when you wanted to talk to your friends, you had to dial up onto the computer, or like if you wanted to call your friends, you didn't just have your cell phone, you didn't have a cell phone, like you had to pick up a phone and a house phone and call, and you would likely talk to their parents who would answer the phone and say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, is Davey there? Like,
Yeah.
oh, hold on 1 second. And then they would put the phone down, and then like, we survived through those times.
And you had to be at places when you said they were going to be there. You couldn't just be like, text my friend, like, I'm going to be 30 minutes late.
Yeah.
Like you had to arrive at appointments on time.
Looking for directions, right? There was a time, right, where it's like you would use a map and you would map out where you wanted to go, right? But in this middle portion of the internet, right, which is the sweet spot of this movie, you would go on MapQuest, right?
I
and you
remember
would
printed directions.
right, like, and
yeah.
you would print off your directions and you would take them in the car with you, which is Google Maps, but like it was the Google Maps step by step, but it was just on paper.
I remember that.
Right?
I would drive when I first started driving. We still did it. I had him in the seat next to me. I'd look up, look down. It's amazing that people were able to. Like I said, I don't know how people were able to look stuff up online before the internet.
Yeah.
That's bananas to me. The only thing I will say about the plot, and we can kind of wrap here, is I don't know if Meg Ryan should be so accepting of Tom Hanks at the end of the movie when she finds out his true identity. I think I would have been pissed.
Yeah, probably.
You strung me along this long. That part I didn't get, but maybe it's the technology. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably one of those where you're shoehorning in the rom-com element of it so that they end up together. It's happily ever after.
Yeah, it was just kind of hard to believe because I would think this guy's an asshole and kind of a creep.
Yeah.
For doing this for that long. Final point, just a little side note, talking about the olden times. That 70s show came out in 1997, right? When that show came out, it was closer to when it was set in 1976 than it is to now.
Yeah, I think I had heard that, and it's kind of like the whole thing with the Wonder Years.
Wonder Years is another one.
Right,
yeah.
where it's another one where it's like, if they set the Wonder Years today, it would be like 1996.
Yeah.
Or something like that, like in comparison to like when it was set, when they actually did it. Right. And that's bonkers to me because the 90s were only 10 years ago. So I don't know what timeline the rest of you are living on, but the 90s were like just happened. That was last decade.
Well, it comes to a point though where it's like the 90s are old. Like the 90s, you could make a movie about the 90s or the TV show and it would feel old. But for some reason, maybe it's because we grew up with from the 90s to now with so much more technology and stuff, it just doesn't feel that way. Like we did when that Sunday show came out in 97, it's like, oh, the 70s, it's so long ago. And now it doesn't feel that way. And I think it has to be because we have access to so much information and the internet and everything where it's just like we're more connected to that decade.
Yeah.
Whereas in the 90s, we couldn't reference the 70s so easily with the internet, where we feel less connected to the decade.
Yeah. That could be true. I think it's just that we have lost, time is a flat circle and we've lost all concept of reality and
that too. This is all a simulation.
I
You've Got Mail, I'm going to say, I know it's referenced a lot and it was well liked at the time. People like the movie, but I don't think it breaks the sevens. Maybe it comes close. Maybe it's like a 6.8.
You've Got Mail, you've got 6.6.
Nice. Split the difference, 6.7.
6.7.
Hey, all right. That's
good job.
Pretty good, yeah. All right, well, if you really want to go back and dive into a movie that takes a look at the 90s,